Sam Seder.
Hi, Molly.
Hi. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure as always.
It's funny because it's like we're 18 months into this train wreck of a president, of a second term. And it's finally hit a moment where my man has hit has hit a polling number where even Alex Jones has decided to break with him.
Yes, we're in like George W. Bush at his lowest ebb territory. And frankly, I think there's probably like 30 to 35% of Americans who are never going to abandon any Republican president ever. I
Mm,
should say, yeah. 30 to 35 percent of Americans who will not abandon a Republican president. He doesn't seem to care in many respects. I think, that's because I think he has made just so much money. There has been so much corruption and graft, and I continue to believe that as much as his stupidity and his inability to do anything other than the last person tells him with Iran, I am quite convinced there has to be a monetary remuneration for him in some way about this. I don't know, I don't know what that would be, but it just seems to me to be the case. But yes, he's losing support. I mean, the biggest thing I mean, if I was him, is I would be very worried about losing the Senate
yes.
because it's one thing. It's not
Mhm.
like he has an agenda. And
Right.
they'll be doing investigations, and they're just gonna, like any investigation, you'll start with the small fish to get to the big fish. But if the Democrats take the Senate, it's hard to imagine him not being impeached and thrown out of office. I don't know if he cares at that point. Maybe he's like, listen, I just made $4 billion over the course of a year. I want to go spend some of it.
It's funny because comes back to this idea. So Donald Trump has this unitary executive theory, which means he's the most powerful president ever because he's also installed the Speaker of the House who is merely a sycophant. But the point of what you're saying, that he's governing like a monarch, that is absolutely correct. And it's funny because earlier on in his first year, everyone was like, "Holy shit, he's governing like a monarch because he's gonna cancel all the elections and do everything he can to stay in power." I think since his polls have really just degraded to such a point that even Tucker Carlson, who again is not a spiritual leader, is not a liberal, do not welcome him into any tent. But that even these people are saying they have to get distance from him in order not to alienate their base. There really is a sense in which, like, he is not governing like a monarch, he's governing like someone who doesn't understand that he's losing.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, like, what does losing mean to him?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I think losing to him means going to jail or not having more money. And it seems to me that he's pretty confident that he's not going to go to jail because they basically eliminated almost all the mechanisms in which he could go to jail even
Yeah.
after he's been president. I mean, I'm sure they're shredding files somewhere in the bowels of the Justice Department. And the guy has just made, I think, I don't think we'll ever know exactly how much. I think it's just an extraordinary amount of money that we can't even really sort of wrap our heads around. And I think it's all been bribery through, his crypto and kickbacks from foreign countries, and
Yeah.
I just and so I don't know. I think that's probably why. And then I would imagine there's also a certain amount of senility. I mean,
Right.
you get to
For
be,
sure.
his age. I mean, I think at one point you're like, I made it to the point where I can coast now."
Right. 79 years old. He is, when he came into office, he was this time the oldest person to ever be put in the presidency, the oldest ever. So as old as Biden was, this guy's actually older, and he did spend all of Biden's term saying that Biden was too old to be president. Would we can have we can have a conversation about that for sure, but it is, Donald Trump is not old in a vacuum. He is old in a world that he created.
Yeah, and I think what we have is probably, like, the portfolio that he interests himself in. It's clear somebody has said, I mean, I think just today or yesterday, ICE said that they were going to cut back on their most extreme tactics, right? I mean, there are elements who feel like, oh, the Republican Party has to have some type of future. We have to mitigate something in some areas.
Right.
Like we don't want to, and I don't know who that is. I don't know if it's Susie Wiles or if it's, JD Vance is in there. I mean, he wants a political future. We saw that also with, what's happening with the CDC now,
Right.
despite the fact that according to the Lancet, I think they came out with a report this week saying that the CDC was just decimated.
Yeah.
They are 80% short on staff. And they also just reportedly quashed a report that said that the COVID vaccine cut the number in half of people who would go to the ER
Yeah.
for COVID. But they have enough personnel to just make sure they don't publish that.
Mhm.
And there's some awareness that we've got to pull back on some of these more extreme things,
Right.
at least for the time being.
And I think we should talk about MAHA because this week RFK Jr. did a number of insane hearings. So
Mm.
he's talking to the House, he's talking to the Senate about cutting the funding for HSS. He's got, because that money needs to go to our war with Iran, our wildly unpopular war with the Iranians, which was never explained to anyone, but has ended up with the Straits of Hormuz blocked. And Donald Trump is like, I don't, today he was like, I don't care about the Straits. We don't get anything from them. And I was like, when you don't understand how dynamic pricing works, when you don't understand when something is fungible. But I want to go back to this idea. There was a coalition. Like Donald Trump was able to make some inroads with women voters because women love RFK Jr., not women who are sane. But no, I'm just kidding. But why do women love? Why? How did this happen? And
Years ago, I mean, I'm thinking like 10 years ago, I remember doing an interview with somebody who was talking about this sort of like crossover between the sort of new age and right wing circles
yeah,
and I think that's where it started. And I think like there was some type of overlap between sort of conspiracy and sort of like new age, health
health. Yeah,
forward, like wellness. It was the wellness
yeah.
community. And I did a radio show with Bobby Kennedy for several years after Air America, with him and one of the biggest trial attorneys in the country. And I still go to conferences with tort lawyers, and there is this strain of like you have a lot of anti-corporate
Hmm.
fighters who are fighting corporations, and they see discovery, and a lot of time these things are settlements, and so this stuff doesn't necessarily get public, and they see a lot of horrific things in terms of like corporate malfeasance and people willing to sell products they know are harming people, and
Right.
it is hard for some not to be conspiracy minded about it. And so there,
Hmm.
you see this crossover there. And I think there, there's a lot of that with MAHA. And I think COVID was very difficult,
Right.
obviously, for people, both not necessarily the vaccine per se, but just I mean the experience of it. There was the whole country was in trauma. And so I think like the skepticism and of vaccines was attractive to people. And sometimes, like, the way I would express this in terms of, like, the efficacy of mentioning a problem that plays on people's anxieties. Everybody
Hmm.
mothers are concerned about their children. Their fathers too. As a society, we're very nervous about our children. And I just remember how, Barack Obama won Iowa in 2008 when nobody gave him a chance. And he started talking about Social Security.
Hmm.
And he said Social Security is in jeopardy. Now, Social Security was not in jeopardy, but he triggered the anxieties of older people our age.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Like,
whoa.
whether it be
I'm 47. I'm younger
okay,
than you.
my age. Like, is Social Security going to be there for
Sorry.
me? Can I get more, et cetera, et cetera? And all you have to do is bring up Social Security. You don't really even have to like, and just remind people of their anxieties. And, you know, Bill Clinton's "I feel your pain." If somebody feels like at the very least their anxiety is being articulated, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
And then, you can go down a rabbit hole. And the problem they're running into with MAHA, as it were, to the extent that that's a thing, but it's certainly some cohort of people, is that there is the Trump administration doesn't really give a shit.
Which
And
you don't
so
say.
if there's money to be made by,
Roundup.
immunizing Roundup from or from Monsanto, from or Bayer, from any potential liability, they're going to go for it. That runs contrary to Kennedy's whole ethos. To the extent that like his anti-vax stuff has now been seen as a liability in the White House, that seems to be turning as well. And what we're watching with Kennedy at this point is, I mean, it was on display yesterday. It was fascinating when he was trying to justify Donald Trump's math. He said, when if the price goes up,
Yeah.
if it's $100 and it goes up to $600, that's a 600% increase. Now, this is not really even the point, but that's actually a 500% increase, right? But
Yes.
nevertheless, and he says, so if it's at 600, it goes down to 100, that's a 600% decrease.
Right.
Now, of
Right.
course, what I found fascinating about this on a couple of different levels was one, if you want to know how Bobby Kennedy lies and manipulates studies, sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Like that's a
Right.
perfect example because I think like even those of us who are like barely math literate understand that 100% of a thing, you can't reduce that more than 100%. You can
Yes.
multiply it
Correct. Yes.
more than 100%, but you can't reduce it more than 100%.
I am no math genius, but even I.
And so it was a great window into how he thinks and manipulates and where he's willing to go in terms of presenting his argument, right?
Mhm.
And then the other thing was, here's a guy who, and we saw this on display in the hearings this week, like the Monsanto stuff, out the window, Mercury.
Yeah.
And for him, like Mercury, he was on Mercury 22
Right.
years ago when he's
Right, right,
writing
right.
in Rolling Stone about the vaccines. I mean, that's it. And the idea that,
Yeah.
the Trump administration allowing more mercury in the air, I mean, I can tell you it is a deep, deep obsession with mercury.
Right.
And having to sort of like cover and deflect during these hearings about that, and then getting in front of Donald Trump and trying to essentially, like, he has an audience of one now. And
Mhm.
it shows how, even from the perspective of which I totally disagree with, well, in terms of like, his conspiracy theories and what I think he genuinely believes. I think,
Mhm.
there's we could speculate
I
as
mean,
to
you
why.
know him.
Yeah, and I should say, full disclosure, I've not talked to him in quite some time.
Probably
Um,
for the best.
yes, I'm frankly disgusted by his behavior.
Yeah.
Beyond, the typical amount that I'm disgusted by everyone in the Trump administration. But to watch how much he is going to genuflect to Donald Trump, he has an audience of one, and I think people, he has sold out even those completely perverse, and I think, and warped principles that he had.
Mhm.
He has gone full mercenary now, and
Mhm.
I think that's I think they're for people who are one issue voters like MAHA people. I think that they're done. They see Kennedy, from their perspective, the white knight went into the city of sin, and he's now like become a swamp creature, to mix many metaphors.
I like it. A fifth of all Trump voters now, this is a statistic I saw today, believe that Trump should be impeached.
Really,
Like, that they've so flipped that they are now,
that seems
uh
high to
it
me.
does seem high. Wait, let me find it.
But I mean, look, there was a cohort of people who voted for him because they wanted an unnamed change to the system.
Mhm.
And I think for part of that cohort, it has been immigration has appalled them. The immigration policies have appalled them. They didn't realize they were going to be a target, or just like how vicious it would be, or that their friend would be a target, or their
Right,
parents, or their, And I think for another cohort, it's like inflation's not down. Why
right.
wages are not up. Gas is now super expensive. I think they're like, what the hell? You're just like the rest of them.
So I actually am right, believe it or not. G. Elliott Morris, who's been on this podcast, 1 out of every 5 2024 Trump voters supports impeaching the president.
Wow, that's
Per
crazy.
our new poll at Strength in Numbers. It's crazy, but, these are voters, they were low a lot of them were low information
Yep.
voters, low frequency voters. They saw Joe Rogan, they saw something, they saw a quick bit of he's gonna make things less expensive. Some of them hadn't the younger voters have the highest level of Trump remorse, and, they were like, This isn't what we wanted."
Yeah, I mean, he ran as a change agent, and he was helped with that mission by, I would argue, Kamala Harris, by going around with Republicans and saying, he's the outsider."
Right,
I mean, that
right.
was a problem.
So you think Liz Cheney did not get the base excited?
It's not a question of getting the base excited. I mean,
Right.
obviously she didn't, and she
Yeah.
there was a cost associated with that.
Mhm.
But from their perspective, they thought there would be a plus, and all they were doing was reinforcing the narrative that Trump was trying to run on again, which
Right.
is, I'm an outsider, I'm a change agent, I'm going to come in there, and they're going, but you are an outsider, and
Right.
here's the entire political establishment,
Right.
lining up against you. And they were literally reinforcing what he was trying to run on,
Yeah.
which is,
It
I'm
was
gonna bring change. I'm not like, and it was a disaster.
yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are just like, and particularly younger people, I don't know, like if you're 25, were you really paying that much attention to what the president was doing from 16 to 20? You know what I
No,
mean?
you were
Like,
not.
no, you weren't. And, even if you're 30, were you paying that much attention? Maybe,
Right.
probably not. And
Sa
here comes a change agent. You want change. That's it.
So, Sam, this is something I'm curious about because I'm writing about it. Like, one of the things that struck me that Harris had problems with was she was very uncomfortable running against billionaires. And she was very uncomfortable with that kind of populist language that even Donald Trump, despite having the richest cabinet and despite being quite rich, was able to embrace. Do you think that was talk us
I
through
don't,
that?
I mean, I don't know, like, who knows what's inside, anybody's head. But I think that, like, she had a history of moving around ideologically. So I think, like, I don't think anybody would ever have accused her of being an ideologue. And I think it was a function of, like, who are the people around her? She was doing debate prep with someone who was moonlighting, because during the day they were serving as chief counsel for Google against
Right.
the US government with their antitrust thing.
Right.
Her brother-in-law, who's a top advisor, was counsel for Uber, and they're gonna bring in people who are like-minded, and they consider themselves non-ideological, but at the end of the day, they have a very corporate, money-centered ideology, and that is the way that they think. The corporate mentality was, lay low, don't offend, these donors. These are the
Right.
people who are, Tim Walls's "They're Weird" was one of the single most effective political,
Right.
messaging I've ever seen. I've been doing
Yeah,
this for 20 years.
and they shut it down.
And they shut it down. It was one of the most effective things I've ever seen. It was brilliant. I don't know if he meant it, but, but it was brilliant, and they shut that down because I think they were like, they wanted a constituency that looked like them. And, you don't say you don't say weird. That's
Right.
just that's just not appropriate in a political thing. And then, their hostility towards, antitrust. I mean, they
Yeah.
and frankly, the Gaza stuff. Now, I wish if the Democrats had only thought to do like an autopsy, not like a
Right.
literal but to actually
Right.
do an autopsy and
Well,
to
it's
find out what. I mean, look, we all know they're sitting on this autopsy because we
because it
already
makes
know.
all the consultants look terrible.
It makes the consultants look terrible, but it also is about Gaza. I mean, let's not
Right.
kid
Right,
ourselves.
right, right.
There were reporting that Harris canvassers were basically told when they were coming back with like, "We're getting a lot of Gaza responses. Like, we're no longer recording that.
Yeah.
Tell us
Yeah.
the other response. We're just not.
Yeah.
That's just no
Yeah.
longer an option." They managed to alienate a lot of core constituencies
Yeah.
that probably voted for Harris, but they didn't go out and encourage other people to vote for her.
Right, and that's the thing, staying home is just as problematic or not getting other people out there, and that's why she lost those swing states. Sam Cedar, will you come back?
Of course.